I'm tweaking into a whole new era. What's going on? NPC the game live Sunday fun day. District 13, the real District 13, Shaolin, Taiwan. Good to have you. Good to have you. Let's get into some gangster shit, man. Today's episode is Fear and Loathing in South Central Los Angeles. Rolling 30's, Harlem Crips, Abandoned Anger, and Rydog. Yeah, my good friend, one of my best friends, my brother Ryan. Shout out to Ryan Crenshaw High. Um, Shout out to the fucking OTW first. Good to see you, brother. Yeah, El Perro. Greetings, Hotep. What's the science behind Hotep? Look within, my other brother, my brother. Good to see you, brother. The high-powered holistic knowledge. Yeah, my new brother, Ragamuffin. Ragamuffin Vision, how's it going, brother? Good to see you. NPC, Leopard Print, my sister. What's going on? Shout out to the Monkeys, rock band. You know who you are. Yeah, Jack Talcott. Michael McDonald trying to do his best Jack Talcott impersonation right there. Yeah, so, bro, I've been inspired to be nostalgic and look back into my old archives of doing things and the narrative. And some of my fondest memories took place in South Central Los Angeles and Greater LA County. That's the uncommon commonality. Me and my twin Shadow Buddha, we have in common, right? Is the whole um, LA connection, and South Central is definitely a place that was been on my consciousness since fucking forever. Seems like it. Ever since like Dre and Snoop came out with the Chronic, and they taught us how to smoke, man. We learned from them. Even though, interesting enough, I don't think Dre even smoked, but Snoop does, and he still does. But anyway, the great Warren G, born on November 10th, the same birthday as yours truly, inspired me literally after high school to go figure out to see what was Long Beach all about, do my field research there. So ended up going to Long Beach State off that G Funk um, chamber, right? The great Warren G man inspired me to go down there, and I had a blast. I had a class with my good friend Ryan. At the time, I didn't know who he was, and yeah, we literally were like inseparable that first year. He didn't even live in the dorms, you know. I had gone to school there, and then my roommate was my good friend Brian Leo from high school, and Ryan, I met him at EOP class at Long Beach State. EOP is Educational Opportunities Program. You know, basically a program for kids from the hood, run through the state university program to kind of get us ready, get it used to the college life, and let us know about the certain resources there to help us, right? So I met him in that class, kind of like a welcome back Cotter class, and Ryan and I instantly clicked. And at the time, I think he was working at Disneyland. Disneyland as one of those people that pick up the trash and shit. And in our school was like, I don't know, maybe like 45 minutes away from the OC Anaheim or whatever. So, and he lived in South Central, over there in the Harlem 30 territory, um, off of Vermont. And he needed a place to chill in between classes and going to work. So he ended up chilling in our dorm all the time. We ended up playing PlayStation, NBA Live, Madden, all that good shit, you know. And he really made me appreciate LA, man. Because even though it's California, it might as well be another world for coming from Northern California. But He made that transition into SoCal life easy. And he wasn't the only one. There was a lot of good people I met down there. A lot of good people, man. Is there audio? Can you not hear me? Can you hear me right now? Put a one in the chat if you can hear me. Is it me? Am I just talking? Nobody's hearing me. Is it so low? What's up? You can hear me good. Thank you, OTW. Uh, yeah, yeah. So me and Ryan, man, pals, right? But it definitely introduced me to that SoCal gang culture because at the time he was doing his thing, going to college, he still was involved with the Crips, and we definitely found this out. Me and Brian traveling with him in his Impala in South Central. It was so crazy that this is when the starter hats, new era baseball caps, they started making different color baseball teams. And he had a red hat and a and a blue hat, and he would literally switch hats depending on what neighborhood he was wearing when he was driving. Even though he was a Crip, man. Uh, so many interesting stories in LA. So many interesting. Anybody from LA here? Spend time? Yeah. Let me make sure this shit is correct. Oh, I know what I gotta do. Here we go. I gotta go in, check my audio, and yeah, that should work now. Oh, you can hear me now. Okay. Before I was like whispering. Yeah, all that to say, thank you for saying that. I learned a lot about LA gang culture from my friend Ryan, up close and personal, being pressed at the barbershop with him, uh, by people, other alleged gang members and whatnot. Yeah, you're from Bakersfield, huh? So that's SoCal, definitely. Yeah, but definitely had some interesting experiences in SoCal. Hold on, let me get this up here. So his gang was the Rolling 30 Crips, right? And this gang is crazy because a lot of the Crip gangs they'll get along with they'll get along with at least some of the other blood gangs, but I think the Harlem 30 Crips are staunch Crips. They don't really fuck around with the other blood gangs and whatnot. Let me give you a little history about the Harlem 30 Crips. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's all about.
And boys wanna hate, chunk up the note. Boys talking down, I got them diamonds in.
Original Harlem Crips (OHO), also known as the Dirt Gang, are an active African American multi-generational street gang located on the west side around the Jefferson Park region of South Los Angeles, California. Their history dates back as far as 1960s, making them one of the longest standing Crip neighborhood in Los Angeles, which runs from Jefferson Boulevard to Martin Luther King Boulevard between Crenshaw Boulevard and Normandy Ave. The Rolling 30's Harlem Crips, formerly known as the Harlem Godfathers, consist of several cliques such as 35th Street, 37th Street, 39th Street Avenues, and Denker Park. The Harlem 30's Crips are considered the third largest Crip gang in Los Angeles, behind the Rolling 60's neighborhood Crips and the 8 Ray gangster Crips. The Rolling 30's original Harlem Crips falls under the Rolling Zeros umbrella. The Rolling 30's Harlem Crips are known to sport Texas Rangers and Texas Longhorns baseball caps with the logo letter capital T to represent 30s. Law enforcement estimates there are between 700 and 1,000 active members of the Rolling 30s Crips. They can be
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Wiggins TV. I'm your host, S. Wiggins, aka Wiggins, aka Worldwide Wiggins, man. Y'all done seen the Rolling 20's Blood Santa Claus video, man. I know y'all ain't think I wouldn't go do the other side for my lokes out there. We gon' keep it fair and official, man. We got another good one coming from the Rolling Crips out there on the other side of Jefferson. I got another Hood Legends episode for y'all that's fire. Here we go. Now, in my opinion, the Rolling 30's is probably the most reputable Crip hood in South Central LA. With all due respect to my lokes I'm connected with out there, you know. Matter of fact, my boy I was just telling y'all about that Santa Claus from Rolling 20 Neighborhood Bloods video, whose name was Joker. Joker told me himself, Rolling 30's is no joke, and they deadly as hell. And that's cuz Smigos, and that's why I respect Joker. He kept it 100, you feel me? But yeah, the Rolling 30's, they really get down. They don't play. And also, once again, in my opinion, humbly, in my eyes, they the most hated Crip hood in all of LA. By blood. Because they don't really get along with no domos like that. To my knowledge, they just, you feel me? Just salve. You can't say it's the 60's is most hated by Bloods, because not all Bloods hate 60's based on what I seen in jail and what I heard in the streets. Think about this. I ain't never heard of any Bloods saying, hey, I got a homie from 30's. Never. I could be wrong. I am human. Correct me if I'm wrong. But them and the 90's, I would say is the most hated by all Bloods. They don't tolerate no B's at all. But today we gonna recognize a
I was on mute the whole time. Shit. Look within with the comment. Patrick with the comment. I never messed with the gangster. Hell's Angels, though. They looked out for me. Yeah, man. That's funny. You say that. I had the realization today of the fact that I think subconsciously programmed I wanted to be before the Bloods and the Crip. I wanted to be in the Hell's Angels. My uncle was a Hell's Angel. My first ride on a motorcycle when I was probably around Ben's age, 6 years old, 6 or 7, was on a Harley. Which the Hell's Angels, there ain't no other motorcycle besides a Harley. Everything else is that's not a motorcycle. He took me on that on Leicester Avenue in San Jose. Like from 0 to 60 in a fucking couple seconds on the back of that hog. And yeah, man. Yeah. Shout out to the Hell's Angels, man. Rock your support your white and red, huh? That's it.
Hood legend from Rolling 30's, who was one of the best hood fighters and a real stepper in the streets of LA. I'm talking about Harlem's finest, Crazy Keith. Back in the days, it wasn't only enough to have guts to pull a trigger. Your fighting skills had to be up to par as well. Crazy Keith embodied both aspects of cripping, squabbling and putting in work. I heard stories of him knocking out enemies in the county jail all the way to the streets since a youngin'. Legendary author and former A-Train Gangsta Crip member Monster Cody wrote about a personal encounter that he had with Crazy Keith in his book. He claimed to have pressed Crazy Keith after hearing that Keith and other Crips from the Rolling Crip card was plotting on killing him. Cody said that him and one of his homies, whose name shall remain anonymous in this video, caught Crazy Keith slipping one night. He said that Keith was going to see a girl or something. He claimed that Keith kind of backed down and denied having any problems with Monster Cody or having any knowledge on plotting on his demise, from what I remember. This particular excerpt from Monster Cody's book received negative feedback from some OGs because they felt like seeing how Monster Cody was an enemy of the gang that Crazy Keith was from, Rolling 30's, and he from A-Tray, of course he would try to discredit him. And why would he give him his props? 30's and A-Trays don't really get along like that. But then others say that Monster Cody had no reason to discredit Crazy Keith because in his book, he definitely gave props to the founder of the Rolling 30's, James Miller.
Yeah, Monster Cody is the quintessential book about Crippin' life, autobiography.
AKA the Brim Killer. James Miller was another solid LA legend who was credited with being a military-type genius who added an organization to the Crip modules whenever he was locked up. And his structure tactics are still used today in the jail system. Years later, unfortunately, James Miller was found dead.
So the structures, you watch a lot of these gang YouTube niche channels, and they're really good, really interesting stuff. That's American history, man. That's alive. And Americans have always been obsessed with cowboys and Indians and the ops, right? And this is manifested with the mob lore, and also now the street gangs. And here's the thing, the discipline that this particular Crip gang set put out, it's really important because there's a lot of crews out there. Like I was talking about Oakland, a lot of the black gangs, they necessarily don't do the color thing, but they definitely have crews and whatnot. And actually, the funny thing is the discipline that a lot of these Crip gangs and blood gangs have is actually what got them RICO cases too. Because when the government can prove that you're a legitimate organization doing criminal activity, and a lot of that has to do with, the reason they're able to do their criminal activity because they have disciplines and codes and procedures. The fucking government will use that against you too.
Dead in his jail cell in 2006, allegedly. Rest in peace. Now, y'all know me. I'm not going to confirm nor deny it. I wasn't there. I'm not old enough to even know. And I'm just telling y'all both sides of the situation. And y'all be the judge. And y'all make your own verdict. But allegedly, not Wiggins, it was said by others that Crazy Keith really did a thing out there during the 80s or whatever. Allegedly, the LA Browns, Rolling 20's, and any other Bloods in the area that was enemies of him knew his body of work. Some of the younger ones would turn down FaZe with him if they was locked up in the same dorm. And on the streets, he was allegedly known for chipping B-dogs. I ain't gonna say too much. So the ones who wasn't really about gangbanging would avoid him at all costs. He was a real savage out there. I'm not finna get into details about Crazy Keith's passing. I'ma just say rest in peace to him and condolences to his family. Rest in peace to James Miller, the originator of Rolling 30 Harlem Crips, and condolences to his family. And rest in peace to Monster Cody, and condolences to his family. This was just a short one. I wasn't even gonna do nothing today.
Yeah, let's find out about Miller. Find out a little bit more about Miller. What he had to say. The founder of the Rolling 30.
Welcome back to another episode of Warren Cali. In this episode, I'm going to detail the story of Big James Miller from the original Harlem 30 Crips. Big James was born James Miller on July 27, 1955 in Los Angeles, California. Initially, James grew up in a two-parent home, but his parents would later split up, and he would later move around Los Angeles.
Hold on.
James Miller on July 27, 1955.
July 27 on the Leo Cups. Leo Cancer.
In Los Angeles, California.
Leo's great leader.
James grew up in a two-parent home, but his parents would later split up, and he would later move around Los Angeles in various different areas. Much of James' childhood, he would be back and forth between his mother and father's homes, putting him to go to different schools in different areas and meeting a host of new people. As a kid, James was chubby, so he was often picked on because of his weight. But by middle school, James would go through a transition, and his body would change with him becoming muscular. And the past issues that he faced would build hate and vengeance in James, and anybody who messed with him in the past or the future were going to pay for it.
Yeah, a lot of the street gangs, the ethnic street gangs in America, they come to, even in Taiwan too, they come because a minority group's getting picked on, right? They're getting picked on. And you can see how getting picked on can fuel your anger and rage towards the ops. And then you find other people who are picked on, and you got an uncommon commonality with them. And then you get a gang that supposedly kind of formed on righteousness, you can say, for the protection of their community. And then ends up becoming something else, maybe.
Over the teenage years of James' life, he became known for being a tough individual, and he would go against anybody who opposed him. During the 70s and James' teenage years, Crips and Blood gangs started forming all over Los Angeles, and James and his crew of friends would form a gang called the Harlem Godfathers. And James is credited as being a founder of that gang. James would go to various high schools like Dorsey and Manual Arts, and was known as a football star, but James was still active and gangbanging heavy in the streets. And at Manual Arts, he would get into it with the Brims, a gang a lot of the Crips hated. The was and a top rival to several Crip gangs, like the gang that James would be in. With everything that James was involved in the streets, James would go to juvenile hall and even youth authority during his teenage years, and he would further his name in the gang world, being known for his size, which he would gain the name Big James or BJ. And his heart and his leadership and fighting skills got him respect from several sets.
Look at Leo with that big mane, the afro, with the sun behind his head.
Back on the streets, Big James would become even more vicious over time. His street activities would gain him the name the Brim Killer, with the Brims and other Bloods being his gang main rival. And that's something Big James would take to heart.
The Brim Killer, that's like those Crips used to wear BKs, British Knights shoes. BK, bitch killer. A blood killer. That's what they would say too. Shout out to Lindsay. How's it going? She has a comment. I was in Compton a few weeks ago and saw a house in the heart of it for sale for $1 million. Wow. Kendrick Lamar. Maybe his recent skyrocketing success made that price even higher. That's crazy. That's in the hood. Don't get it twisted. There's probably some pockets of Compton, I would assume, that are nice, that are like decent, but $1 million. I want to know how big that house is. I bet she's not even that big. I bet she's not even. It's not even that big for $1 million. That's the California lifestyle.
Destroy every rival
Lindsay, what were you doing in Compton? Just curious. Sightseeing?
in his way. The Harlem Godfathers
Business?
would later become the original Harlem Crips and other names like the Rolling 30 Crips off their geographical location within their turf, with their turf being located on the west side of South Central within the streets based in the 30s. By the mid-70s, Big James was causing a lot of destruction in the streets, with him being a part of a lot of shootings, a lot of gang wars, and also a lot of robberies. But by 1976, James would be arrested on a long list of charges, from a long list of robberies, kidnappings, and also murders. And this
Comment from Lindsay. Visiting my dad, who was in Rancho, America, California. That's interesting. I'm glad you brought up your dad. I remember you had talked about your dad for a second on the OTW, and the way you described him was like this, you literally said a Chad, right? You know, of course, and the Chad has his fair share of options with the ladies and whatnot, and with that comes other interesting characteristics that you brought up. So shout out to your dad for sure. I tip my hat to him. I wonder if he was a Giga Chad. Yeah. Oh shit. Let's see. There was no kids playing outside. Really, huh? Huh, interesting. I would think in the hood there'd still be kids playing outside. I know in the past they used to play in the. Now is that a thing? Because people are like it's way too dangerous, or is it dangerous or not? These kids are like they're probably not doing their homework. They're probably like playing video games or something. They ain't trying to go outside. Huh? Probably safer that way. Yeah. Yeah. Some of the white folks I've seen in the hood in Oakland, they were living there. They were affiliated with the Hells Angels. Like we were speaking about the Hells Angels earlier. God Heart, shout out to you. Yeah, you know that the chapters over there off is it MacArthur Boulevard in East Oakland, right? I know it's near Skyline, the foothills, at the flatlands, as we say, like where the hills start. I think their clubhouse over there. Interesting. You're right. Amphetamine ruined biker gangs. There's a lot of skinheads even in Aryan Brotherhood that talked about some of these stories about how they've had bad childhood, like, you know, and in horrible environments they grew up, but it wasn't necessarily their parents or surroundings that destroyed their life. It was their addiction to methamphetamine that destroyed their life. Crazy, bro.
to be a long dragged out case that took 4 trials to finally decide Big James and his co-defendant's fate. After 3 mistrials off this case, Big James will be sentenced to life in prison at the young age of 21. While in prison, Big James' reputation and status will grow, becoming one of the most reputable and known Crips mentioned in history. He will be a major part of several Crip organizations in prison, like Blue Magic and CCO. CCO will mean Consolidated Crip Organization, but CCO will later disband on several factors, mostly being inner circle turmoil. And Big James will even have his own issues with CCO over him calling shots that will lead to several members getting disciplined, which led to beef within the gang. That move will lead to Big James almost losing his life. After several years in prison, James will start to change his gangster ways and focus on becoming a better man, and he will pick up skills and trades while in prison.
What's going on, Crazy
Big James
Mama?
had endured a lot of chaos in his life, from juvenile hall, youth authority, and prison, which he went to prison for the rest of his life at the young age of 21. So in his final days of life, Big James will be at peace until his death in 2006 at the age of 50. Big James spent over 30 years of his life being locked up, and he gained a deadly reputation from the streets to prison. The gang he helped form, the Rolling 30 Crips, will go on to be one of the most known Crip gangs in Los Angeles and around the world, having different branches in other cities and other states. All that came from Big James doing. This will conclude this episode.
Shout out to you, Big James. Your gang kept my homie safe. My homie Ryan, Ride Dog safe. when he was a youngster and whatnot. You want to know? You want to know who Douglas MacArthur was? Godhart. He was a general during World War II. I believe he was the commanding general of the South Pacific.
The beginning of an extraordinary career. Young Douglas with his father, General Arthur MacArthur, boy colonel in the Civil War and veteran of the Philippine campaign in the Spanish-American War. One day when the son was 13 years old, his father is said to have remarked, "I think there is the material of a soldier in that boy." A truth that was soon made clear. Entering West Point, he showed extraordinary brilliance in his studies, attaining an average that was the highest in a quarter of a century, and he won the coveted A in athletics as well. 25 years later, he was to lead the American team in the World Olympic Games. Meanwhile, the campaign in the Philippines was being brought to a successful completion under his father's able leadership. The son was eager to visit these battlefields, and after West Point, his first assignment was to survey areas of these islands. One of these was the Bataan Peninsula, where he was to fight many years later in a desperate but heroic struggle. The beginning of an extraordinary...
Yeah, so as especially you World War II history buff, yeah, MacArthur was big, man, and the reason why there's so many streets named after him because he was a war hero, and the funny enough that the worst street, one of the most violent, active streets in East Oakland is MacArthur Boulevard. It's crazy out there. Yeah, here's some footage of MacArthur Boulevard, recent footage of a house on MacArthur Boulevard in East Oakland, California. Yeah, man, that's a wild place over there. And they also have a lot of this also in on MacArthur Boulevard. Broad daylight. So here's the thing about you said all those shots she didn't even do anything. And, man, I'll put out a comment. All those shots she didn't even yeah, she's used to it. I really never got used to it living in that neighborhood for like 2-3 years. I didn't really get used to it, but I can understand how she was like, I didn't see anyone get hit. But that's crazy. You notice it's like in the middle of the day. It's not just at night, right? And that was just something like a pistol, semi-automatic, let alone the assault rifles you hear too. They bring those out too. Yeah. Guarding the comments. Same with these streets in every single city, ironically. Run down, lots of crime. Yeah, there is a lot of crime. Why is that? Why is there so much crime in the hood? What do you think? A lot of reasons, right? It's worse than you think. I don't know what to say, man.
To get a better understanding of what life is like in these neighborhoods, Malik has set up a meeting between me and current affiliated gang members. I'm totally not scared. Okay, I'm a little scared. I just let some pee out.
This is Wild Wild the General. No question. You know, nice to meet you, brother.
Nice to meet you, brother. Wild Wild the General is the leader of his crew, the Pirate Gang, here in Altgeld Gardens, reportedly one of the hottest pockets of violence on the south side of Chicago. And if you know me, you know I hate hot pockets.
About a week ago, it was just 2 killers out here, you know, 2 shootings. People died. It may look like it look now, but it ain't sweet. Trust me, this is one of the most infamous projects. It's chaos, man.
I feel like you just invoked the thunder.
That's that force. That's that force. And that was the verification.
Yeah, okay,
you know? You got no validation
that's
needed.
The blue check mark. You got verified.
Yeah,
okay.
Man.
Nationally, when people talk about Chicago right now, it's like the most notorious city in the country. People talk about the South Side and the West Side and gangs. Do you think it's worse than people think it is, or is it exaggerated?
It's worse.
It's worse.
Most drill fans know all about the war between the BDs and GDs in Chicago, but one of the most savage sets in the city has been.
Yeah, you said chaos, Lindsay?
Welcome back. In the previous segment, we were discussing what crime is, what actions should be considered a crime, if there were any principles that we could use to differentiate actions that should be considered a crime from those that should not. I said that we were going to consider the fundamental cause of crime, and that's the first question I'd like to ask Congressman Engels.
Well, causes of crime, I think, vary. There are a lot of people who believe that if you can eliminate poverty, if you can lessen poverty, if you can improve conditions socially, that crime will drop accordingly.
Yeah, I see that. Poverty, if you want to, you don't want to hate people, but if you want to hate something, hate poverty, right? Hate being extremely broke, right? But if there's no poverty, do you think people are still going to be thinking? There'll be some people still thinking in a with criminality in their mind. Is it more of a deep-rooted problem issue?
I would argue that, for instance, in the crime bill that I mentioned, we had monies in there for prevention, for youth activities, for schooling, after-school programs, and things like that. I think that goes a long way in eradicating or helping to eradicate root causes of crime. However, I don't want to imply that poverty in itself is an excuse for someone committing a crime.
Okay, so it's your view that poverty causes crime? That's the fundamental cause of crime?
No, I'm saying that I think poverty in many instances can contribute to crime. If somebody has grown up in a situation of poverty and it's a hopeless situation, that some individuals, given those circumstances, will turn to crime. I don't think it's an excuse, frankly, because there are many individuals who are poor who don't commit crimes.
Right, and there are many that are rich that do. Right?
Well,
if we get rid of poverty, is there still going to be people who are going to have this mentality of committing crimes? Is it not just a money thing, the problem of crime, or is it just a complete, like, more of a core issue of the human brain, how we think, the mind, how we think about things? Is throwing money at the problem enough?
I think there are many that are rich who do.
So then it's not possible to establish a correlation between poverty and crime?
No, I think that clearly if conditions are bad or poor for somebody, then chances are that there is a higher possibility that some of those people might be involved in crime. That's why you have so much crime in so many of the poor neighborhoods. That's true.
Well, was the United States poorer 50 years ago than today?
I don't know.
Oh, 100 years ago? The standard of living was lower, people were poor, were they not?
I think the standard of living was lower years ago.
Right, so was there more crime 100 years ago or 50 years ago?
Well, maybe it gets back to my point about drugs, when I said that I think that crime has increased because of the proliferation of drugs in this country. I think there's a direct correlation with the drug problem in this country and with violent crime.
Okay, so
I
even
think 50 years ago, we didn't have a drug problem in this country.
I agree.
And so I think to a large degree we had less crime.
So, but the point is that even though 50 years ago we were poor, there was less crime, so it's not possible to establish a correlation between poverty and crime and claim that poverty is causing crime, because when we were poor, we didn't have more crime.
Well,
and there's many countries, say like Costa Rica, for example, much poorer than the United States, have lower crime rates,
that's
right?
true.
So,
so
that's not the fundamental cause of
A lot of people are moving over there to Puerto Rico, right? I mean, excuse me, Costa Rica. Because of that, it's a lot safer.
crime.
There are also less guns in that country. We have a proliferation of guns in this country.
Less guns here in Taiwan. Less crime, for sure. Don't get it twisted. Those Taiwanese gangsters are still stabbing each other and cutting each other with machetes and even shooting each other from time to time.
Which leads to crime, I believe leads to crime. That's why we need gun control.
Well, are there more guns per inhabitant in Switzerland than in the United States, and they have lower crime rates?
No, I think what I'm saying is there are many guns in this country. We have a larger amount of guns in this country per capita than any other country in the world. And I believe
in Switzerland they have as many.
Well, I'm not aware of that. I think that
and they have much lower crime rates.
I think that this country has a proliferation of guns, and guns are one factor.
Thank China. Listening with the comment. Thank China and Mexico for increasing the drug addiction. Oh yeah, they help definitely. Definitely, right? China with all the synthetic drugs and whatnot, and Mexico, being the middleman for Colombia, right, and trafficking them in America.
Factor that contributes to crime. You can't talk about crime in terms of simplicity. This is what I said when I started. It's a complex problem, and there are complex solutions if there are any solutions. It's not an easy problem, and there are no easy solutions. The reasons we have crime in this country are many, and there are a lot of things that converge to make crime a big problem in this country. It isn't only because there are guns, it isn't only because there are drugs, it isn't only because there's poverty. But there are reasons, parts of each of those three, and probably 30 others, that converge, and that's why we have crime in this country. We have violence glorified on the television set. We have violence glorified in the movie theaters.
Well, let me ask you a question. Can you reduce crime effectively if you do not know the fundamental cause?
I think different people would disagree on the fundamental causes of crime.
Isn't it necessary to know the cause in order to achieve an effect? Say, if you want to lose weight, don't you need to know that you have to expend more calories than you consume in order to lose weight?
Yeah, but I don't think losing weight and crime are analogous.
But if you want to achieve an effect, don't you need to know the cause so you can achieve it?
No, I think that is, what maybe someone would teach in a college course, but in the real world, I don't think it works that way.
You don't think knowledge is effective in achieving your goals?
No, I didn't say that.
Well, knowledge of relationships of cause and effect, that's what we're talking about. Knowledge in the sense of knowing what the relationship of cause and effect is. What is it? What is the fundamental cause of crime?
I think there are different interpretations, and I think that people have different ideas about what's important in combating crime. Okay?
I agree, but what we're trying to do is sort out which ideas are true and which are not. That's why I'm examining the reasoning behind these various ideas.
I think that my beliefs are true, and somebody else will think that their beliefs are true, and in reality, there's probably nothing that's true. It's just different philosophies and different ideas in terms of how do we get at crime.
There isn't anything that's true as to what is causing crime? There is no truth?
Well, I've given you things that I think are true, and you have told me that, well, didn't we have poverty 50 years?
Yeah, you say poverty, guns, what else?
Years ago.
Right.
And so poverty, in your opinion, cannot be one of the causes of crime.
I didn't persuade you that poverty cannot be the cause of crime if we have situations or countries that are very poor that have low crime rates.
Let me start again, because maybe I'm not getting through. I said that there were a number of things that converge to create crime. Or
Let's
to
examine them one at a time.
That I believe converge to have crime in this country. You may have poverty levels in other countries that are worse than this country, but you may not have guns. Or you may have punitive laws, like in Singapore, okay, where people will not commit crimes because the laws are very, very tough. There are different societies. There are different beliefs in different societies. There are different values.
Isn't that a
and mores
fundamental there?
in different societies.
Aren't a person's conclusions about how he should deal with other people the fundamental difference between a criminal and a person who isn't?
I think that, you see, what you're trying to do is you're trying to say that there are set patterns, that everything neatly falls into a box. And I'm trying to explain that I think that different people have different philosophies about why crime is caused and how to eradicate it. And my beliefs may be different from your beliefs, okay? I believe, for instance, the government ought to do prevention programs, whereas other people will ridicule midnight basketball and say that if you're paying kids to play basketball, or you have these programs to play basketball at night, that is not a way to prevent crime.
Yeah, he's getting very angry at this guy. He's getting mad at the reporter, the journalist, for interrupting him, and also like not letting him maybe interrupting him and not letting him land his plane.
The way to prevent crime is to take that money and build more prisons. Okay, I would say that the way to deal with it is to have a mix of prevention. So you have these youth programs to keep kids off the streets and give them something to do. You use the money to create jobs or create schools, learning, so these kids can get skills so they can be productive citizens. If they're productive citizens and they have an income, that will certainly keep them away from crime. I think that's an important cause. Some of my colleagues think that shouldn't be done at all.
If
you just
can I ask you a question?
Toughen the laws, you build the prisons, you make things tough. That's their philosophy. That's not my philosophy.
I agree that different people have different ideas, but what we're trying to do is sort out which are true. And we're trying to examine whether there's a correlation of cause and effect between poverty and crime, and that's what we discussed first, or between having guns and crime. That was the second. Are there any other things that you think are the cause of crime, to see if we can actually establish a relationship of cause and effect? I suggested that it is mistaken conclusions about life, a person's values, that is the root cause. In other words, if a person is committed to reasoning, producing, and trading as a way of achieving his ends, he won't try to rob or con people. But if he thinks that that is an effective way to achieve his ends, then he will. So I would say, really, that it is a person's fundamental conclusions that is the root cause. And it explains, for example, the other collateral cause that you mentioned, which was drugs. Because if you have bad conclusions about how to live, you think that you can achieve your life by having drugs, and that's just a mistake. So really, drug taking is just an effect from bad conclusions about life. In other words, mistaken values.
Mistaken values, critical thinking not being used.
My name is John Panisi. I'm a former.
Critical thinking not being used in a sense that people aren't thinking right. So regardless what they do with that guy's saying, what they do with these programs they have for the youth or give them jobs. I mean, if you're not thinking correctly, shit's gonna be fucked. Yo, what's going on, Keith? How's it going, man?
Hey, greetings, brother. Thanks for having me up. Greetings, chat. Hey, I'm kind of in line with the same thing. I get the concept here that the reality that's being posed by the guy that was being interviewed is that it's not necessarily the fact that you're in poverty that would cause crime. It's not necessarily the fact that you have a gun that would cause crime. It's not necessarily even the fact that you're wealthy that it would cause crime. But in each of those factors, it comes to the independent decisions that we each make. If we are in poverty, or if we have a gun, or if we are wealthy, whatever the circumstances are, it comes down to our own choices. And this is the bad faith that we have against our fellow man. As such, most predominant crime is, of course, lying, but the secondary most prominent crime is theft. Remember, America came to this land because of oppression and committed terrible crimes against the people on this land. And that was because of their, quote, ownership thoughts. Under the doctrine of discovery, if you discover land, you get to own it. even in their own Christian reality, it says in their scriptures that the land shall not be sold forever, for it is mine. And this goes to everything that comes from the land, including ourselves. Do you really think you own yourself then? I mean, we do pass on, right? If you own things, don't you own them for eternity? Isn't it yours? And therefore you should be able to take it with you anywhere you go?
Oh, that's a good one. I definitely don't. I know the way I see it is you don't take it with you.
Yeah, so, and that's the entirety of the monetary system. It used to be that if a man wanted to up and move from one place to another, he couldn't take his house. So he had to provide mankind provided some way to be able to sell that house, convert it into a paper form that he could take with him to turn around and then reconvert it back into a home in another land.
Ooh, that's very interesting. I'll take it to metaphysical. It's like transmuting energy.
So when
like they say, energy never dies.
Exactly. So if you end up believing in this Christian spirituality where you go to heaven when you're done, and do you get to take your house and claim it your house in heaven, or is a claim that the heaven is our house and this we live in this world but are not from this world?
Yeah.
Great topic too, man.
Yeah. I mean, thanks, man. It's everywhere around the world. It's not just these neighborhoods and these gangs or whatnot. That's just a in-your-face representation of this. I mean, what a lot of people say the biggest gang is the government, or the police are their attack dogs.
Yeah, and
sometimes military.
Yeah, when we talk about that, we think about over time. What did they call them back in America before they were known as gangs? They were known by their affiliates, associated names like tribes, the Chickawannabe tribes and the Chippewa tribe and the Blackfoot. Those are still gangs by today's modern definition, making ownership to a place of land.
Yeah. And one thing is, like these Crips, rolling 30 Crips and all this, Latin Kings, they don't own the street, that block, literally.
Yeah, go ask the county who owns it. Go ask the postal service who owns postal roads.
Yeah. Here's the thing about gangs, though, is someone does come, if they ever do drop the note, and the banks collect, collect on these notes, these fake fiat notes and whatnot. The gangs, the neighborhoods with the gangs, and the gang houses and clubhouses. It's not going to be too easy for them to collect, right?
Exactly. Exactly. But at the same time, it allows for an expansion of the territory into those places that are no longer functional. So even those big buildings, that's why they worry about those big buildings that go vacant and stuff. It's imperative on their mind that they tear them down or re-rent them, get them filled up. Otherwise, they will fill up automatically by nature.
Yes. I mean, and they'll talk down and call them squatters, right?
Exactly.
That's true, man. That is true. They do tear them down quick.
Yeah, homeless people will move in, gangs will move in, all kinds of shit. You see it happening every day through this kind of stuff on a small scale. If it goes to a big scale and there's large scale poverty, that poverty will create a migration of population, even within its own borders.
Yeah. Let's hear you're right. Let's hear what these people have to say about the cause of crime. I'm just curious right here about what they have to say about the cause of crime, which is kind of like this guy's piggybacking and expanding on what the other guy said. I think he's going to take it another direction real quick.
Look who commits crime, right? Many people take it as obvious that the root causes of crime are poverty, or else inequality or structural racism. Yeah. And the reason people believe this is pretty straightforward. If you look who commits crime, right? Overwhelmingly, people that commit crime come from poor communities. Therefore, a simple correlational logic would suggest that poverty is causing crime. And what's more, when you look at someone who robs a liquor store, it's never wealthy people robbing a liquor store, right? It's someone that could stand to gain, someone for whom, $500 in a cash register could really mean a lot, right? Not someone who works on Wall Street. Yet, you argue in your book, and I agree with you, that poverty is not the root cause of crime, nor is inequality. So can you explain how you arrive at that counterintuitive conclusion?
Yeah, I mean, well, it seems counterintuitive at the surface, but I think that once you kind of dig in, it becomes clear why those explanations are insufficient. I mean, for one thing, the vast majority of poor people are law-abiding, right? I think it's when people kind of oversimplify this and make the simplistic claim.
Would you agree on that, Peril? The majority of people they're poor, law-abiding.
Yeah, when you look at the welfare program, it encompasses about 11 to 13% fluctuation over time.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a very large majority of people. And when you think about it in terms of taxes, again, according to Scripture, you're supposed to give 10%. So again, that goes not just to the poverty, but the inequality that they're talking about. And then, of course, your other aspects of wealth and entitlements.
Right.
But it's a very small portion.
Yeah.
Almost entirely a function of poverty, even violent crime. I think it's to make that argument is to malign members of communities who are struggling financially, because the vast majority of them are good. And so I think that's a starting point, right? Like the vast majority of poor people are not criminals. So yes, a lot of criminals are poor, but what we don't know is like which way the causation runs, right? Like it's entirely possible, and I think indeed true, that the sort of characteristics, the sort of antisocial disposition that leads one down a life of crime are also associated with a lack of success, a lack of economic success, that would also be correlated with poverty. And I think that starts to become clear when you try to find a relationship between some of these socioeconomic indicators and violence. And it becomes really hard. So New York City, for example, if you just look at the year before we peaked in homicides, in 1990, we had 2,262 homicides. So look at 1989. The poverty rate that year in New York City was actually slightly lower than it was in 2016. The reason I picked 2016 is because that's the year before we hit our valley number of homicides of 292. So we go from 1990 to 2017. Poverty basically doesn't move, but moves a little bit in the wrong direction, which is to say it goes up slightly, and yet we have this.
So you would think that if it goes down slightly, if we're using this case, that crime would go up, right? Poverty going down. So let's see.
Yeah. Well, actually, the opposite. If poverty is going down and that's the causation of crime, then crime would go down. But it doesn't happen.
No.
Massive decline in homicides.
And by massive, you're talking about like 90% decline,
exactly.
Something like that.
I mean, huge. And it's not just homicides, of course, like lots of other crimes, robbery, aggravated assault, rape, all declined. What that tells me is that to whatever degree poverty might be associated with crime, it is not anywhere close to being an immediate cause of violence. Another thing is that, it's not at all clear that people are better off financially when they engage in violent crime, which is, kind of the focus of the book. It's, when you often watch videos of robbers.
Actually, when you're involved in violent crime, it brings too much attention. You would think,
well, when you end up having to run the gamut of risks and everything, what they're talking about here is those that commit crimes and then find themselves in jail and in the courts, fines, fees, penalties, and all this. Was it really inducive to commit the crime?
Yeah. It was a juice worth the squeeze.
Exactly.
Lindsay Smith with the comment, wealthy people commit different crimes. They do, right? All the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was what I was implying earlier when we talk about poverty. You got the guy that thinks $500 in the till is a lot of money. Whereas the guy on Wall Street, he's dealing in hundreds of thousands of dollars and stuff, and he's got the opportunity to take advantage of that. So that extra $100,000 is what's worth it to him to take that risk and commit that same type of crime. So it's not poverty. It's not poverty. It's our decisions.
Right.
There was one that went viral.
I agree.
That took place in Lincoln Park, which is a really nice neighborhood in Chicago. There was a guy who was getting robbed, and they asked him for his cell phone, and they want to unlock the iPhone, so they're making him give the code, and he doesn't want to give the code. They beat him up. Eventually, he gives the code, and then they shoot him afterward before they take off. They didn't have to shoot him. They got his property. He gave the code. They had already beat him up. There was nothing financially to be gained, and you start to see a lot of that. And the more you dig into it, the more you kind of understand that there's something else.
Was it that they didn't want to? Was it that they didn't want to leave a witness in this case, or
no? He's. I believe he survived.
I see.
I think it had more to do with just the fact that it was kind of a perceived slight. Like, hey, you gave us a hard time. That this is.
Yeah, that sounds like choices people are making, huh? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're hasty, emotional choices because of their conditions, and people like that in the height of a crime. We see the same thing with police. They do the same thing. They're in an emotional state. They take it personal. They don't care about anything else beyond that. And I'll be damned, I'm going to shoot you just because you made me work harder for it.
The inconvenience, sir.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is for not cooperating. This is for the sign of disrespect. And when I talk to police officers in a lot of rough neighborhoods and working on gang task forces in cities and stuff, they tell me a lot of the same thing, which is at the root of a lot of homicides and aggravated assaults are actually these notions of perceived disrespect. And I've heard this a lot throughout my career, and I remember hearing my father talk about it as a police detective, saying like these guys ended up in a shooting because one guy looked at him and he didn't like that, and so they got in an argument. The next thing you know, people take the guns out.
Yeah, I mean, because to bring it back to the gangs where this started on Rolling 30 Harlem Crips, literally the whole setup of that program, they call it the trap for a reason. The hood a trap because it is a trap. Dude, somebody wears a certain color that's your opposition, your ops, right? You're instantly you feel disrespected if they're wearing that in your quote unquote territory, right? That's sometimes disrespect. That shit does not happen on Wall Street where these people in Silicon Valley, these hedge fund operators and whatnot, who are probably, some of them are stealing money, when they see an opposition, another businessman wearing a certain color suit, they're not tripping off that, right? So there's some weird shit going on, bro. I guess I don't want to get conspiratorial, but what is it about like the lesser crimes that get all the attention while it's rare that these white collar crimes get as much attention and whatnot?
Yeah, Lindsay was talking down in the chat with me.
Okay.
And she says, if the correlation is not causation, what is the number one impetus for crime? And impetus is the body that moves things. And so I explained to her, it's the individual choice. It's that free will. Again, my free will is what motivates me in my actions alone. This is the body of impetus for my causation. That's what motivates me, is my choices and the reasoning behind them. No one else has that. That's why intent is so important in these courts.
The intent, huh?
Yeah, that guy that was drunk and inebriated that walked in and took the bottle from the liquor store. His intent was not to be a thief. His intent was to live in the state of being that he's become accustomed to. It's his lifestyle. So if he'd have had the ways and means by non-regulation of moonshining, he'd have more likely, instead of committing the crime by taking it from somebody else, made his own. So where is the crime? By intent. That's why I say it's your own free will what is the causation of any crime out there.
Right. Let's see this guy.
One of the typical patterns for long-term criminality is there's a small minority of boys, about 5%, who are quite aggressive by temperament at age 2. They kick, hit, steal, and bite. And so if you put them with other 2-year-olds, they're aggressive.
Right.
Now, 2-year-olds tend to be egocentric anyways, but these 2-year-olds are egocentric and aggressive. Most of those boys are socialized by the age of 4. And so then, and what that means is they start to develop friendships that are somewhat reciprocal at about the age of 3, and then that expands, right? And they're often boys who are disciplined appropriately, often by fathers at home, right? And then they get to be socialized well enough so they can have friends, and then they have friends. And instead of being aggressive and tilting in the exploitative direction like they did when they were 2, they learn to be, competitive within the confines of sports and so forth. They sublimate it into some other, But if they don't manage that by the time they're 4, they never manage it. It's very hard to be socialized into a friendship network if you don't accomplish it between the ages of 2 and 4.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. It seems to lay down the pattern for it or something like that, or establish the expectations. We don't exactly.
That's the case, but in terms of gangs, though, like those 4-year-olds are in the same neighborhood, for example, they're all clicking up off this this major emphasis on being disrespected and being respected.
Well, yeah, and I think that's because of the comfort and convenience of society that we get to concentrate so much on that aspect of respect as a societal thing, when in reality, respect is a natural thing. This is the thing about having, if you have an image and likeness of that very Lord in front of you, and you're getting ready to box it out for life and death, is that not the power of God, the power of life and death? And is that not a power that runs through each and every one of us? And is that not a power that we should both be afraid of and endeavor to endear?
No.
I think that's the matter of respect that people lose.
Yeah.
I go up against anybody. I'm willing to put my life on the line for certain things. But when it comes to the respect for a criminal that's got a gun pointing in my face, I'm going to give him the respect that he's delusional enough that he will pull that trigger. That's a different see, that's a different kind of respect than societal respect. I don't respect him because he put a gun in my face, but I have to respect him for his nature. That's a must in order for me to survive.
Yeah. You're forced to do these things. How do you think anger is equated in all this?
Well, surprisingly enough, that's why I came up, is because the title talks about abandoned anger.
Yeah.
A lot of the people on this panelverse that I've been on for the last couple of years see me as a very angry old man, because when I first came on, I was.
Yeah. You're mentioning that because you were dealing with like literally core stuff, health stuff, right? Too.
Well, yeah, and that's going to this causation thing. We have to understand, again, in that certain aspect of respect, you have to look at yourself and see what your own respects are. And so in that, I realized that because my health condition being the way it was, it allowed me to be more aggressive than I normally am, because I'm not that kind of person in reality.
Yeah.
Same thing when I put my foot down and they force it, then I get aggressive. That is not my normal personality.
Yeah, this is like more. This is how I know you. I wasn't in the panelverse like last year, but this is how I know you. I know you can get fired up, but like,
oh yeah,
yeah. This is to me. This is Keith on default. We'll say.
Yeah, and I'm not afraid to act out like that again. That's my passion, and I tell people, when it comes to that 12-step program thing about your character defects. Okay, they tried to tell me the same thing in 12-step program, that my anger was a character defect. No, it's not the character defect. What it is I defect the character of being able to use my anger in an appropriate manner.
Yeah, it's a purpose. It is. It's a tool.
Absolutely. Learn how to use it appropriately and keep it in balance.
Yeah. And speaking of that, this is why I like one of my good friend Shadow Buddha, he showed me this this clip of this video, and it kind of got me to thinking about this whole concept about abandoning anger. This is interesting. Tell me what you think real quick.
And I'm going to pass off to the reason why I use my Kindle is I can enlarge the font so it's big enough for me to see. These goggles are great for seeing what's around me and seeing people's faces and watching my dog run. But for some reason, I haven't got used to reading from them, but I'm going to try. And if not, Ram will any form that arises.
There we go.
So name and form, the Pali is Namarupa, Sanskrit too, Namarupa. And it's the basic problem of ignorance of Four Noble Truths manifesting as fabricated views of self and clinging to those views. To simplify that, it simply means that I cling myself. I put a name on this form. And once I do that, once I identify this as John from a fabricated point of view, I'm stuck in fabrication. And so from that point on, I will cling and identify myself through any form that arises, especially a form that catches my eye. I often talk about the red Ferrari or piece of chocolate cake or anything like that. Anything that we identify in the
That's that ego and simplicity.
Right. You see it.
Can be seen as name and form, but it's primarily self-identification with a body that we fool ourselves to think is substantial and permanent. Name and form.
Name and form.
Absolutely. What am I without a name? So dismiss the name and simplify it as I. And what am I without form? Without this body, what am I? In other words, what are my thoughts? Where do they come from? What is their genesis?
Dude, I don't think so. Some people that go through their whole life without thinking that. Yeah. What are you? You're this void back here.
Well, we like to think them as our thoughts. Again, you don't own even your own thoughts. They come from somewhere that you don't even know. How can you own that?
Exactly. Yeah. You're just fronting.
Bear with me just a little bit tonight. As a strong charioteer controls their charge, the disciple controls anger as anger arises. So that's an interesting line to me because many people in spiritual practice, so-called Buddha, true Buddhism isn't a spiritual practice at all, is it? But many people who take these types of spiritual practices, Buddhist practices, see it as a way of salvation, meaning that once I decide I'm a Buddhist, I should never be angry again. The Buddha taught that his Dhamma is about becoming completely free of any fabricated views and allow ourselves to be fully human. And that's such an important line.
And being human is expressing emotion too, right, Keith? Yeah, that's what I think.
Well, that's part of it. But again, the greater part of humanity is not only being able to express them, but to be able to comprehend them so you can express them appropriately.
Appropriately, that's a good word right there.
Does it mean that as those engaging in right effort and integrating the Eightfold Path should never be angry? Because that's denying our humanity, isn't it? It means that we don't take things personally, and so we don't give rise to the continuation of anger and to justify it. Anger arises and it passes away. And I guess I had some kind of basic understanding of that because I remember when I was married, which was before I came to the Four Noble Truths, my future ex-wife would always she'd be upset because I could get angry, usually in a wrong way, but I'd get angry and the next moment I'd be okay with it. So I always had.
I think, I've been there. Like I can get extremely angry, then get back to baseline. I guess normality. But there's certain things that I keep dwelling over, which I'm trying to correct that. You know, not worth it.
Had this ability to.
Yeah, it's not worth it when you realize that's the ego.
Exactly. It's almost like our gym for some of us is the panel verse, all of the above sector, like for anger management.
Well, surprisingly enough, again, that's why I came out. I realized this is a good platform for me to better comprehend my own anger management because, like I said, 2 years ago, I came up on these panels. I was new to the panels. I'm not new to doing videos. I've been doing this for 8 years.
Right.
But I came up on these panels 2 years ago, and yeah, it was a little striking. Particular, again, I'm the guy that looks in the mirror, the man in the mirror. I'm the one who must account for myself. I don't care so much what everybody else says about me, but if I don't care what I know about me, then there's a problem.
Right. That's a big problem because you're the only one that can truly modify yourself, right? People can give you suggestions, but you have to see it.
Yeah,
you have to see it.
Yeah, and you'll hear me reference not quite as much as biblical sources, but that 12-step program. Again, folks, that's a biblical setup as well. But the 12-step program has that serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can. And my little tweak on it is that last verse says, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know that's me. No one else, nothing else.
You, yeah.
Just me. That is the impetus.
Yes. That's a great add-on right there. How's it going, Alex? Good to see you. Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up I'm glad you brought up the second time you said the 12th step, because we were literally talking about this on our Discord about someone's asking about the creator of AA, Bill Wilson and whatnot, and how they say, like, I'm I'm so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic. There was that and it made me think about one of my favorite spiritual teachers on YouTube is a recovering alcoholic and group leader to a lot of meetings. But what he does, Paul Heineman, is he took the 12-step program and he adds his passion for non-duality teachings and overlays it on top of that, which is very interesting to me because it actually made more sense to me, like when they start talking about this higher power, because in this age, Keith, a lot of the young men and women, they have this concept of not wanting to literally be humble to a higher force, call it they can't even say God, they have to say the universe a lot of times, which is fine. I mean, whatever you like to say, people like to say, right? But in the end, it's probably all the same thing, in my opinion. Yeah. But so what I'm saying is the whole 12-step program is very high powered, but however, just like anything, why not add some tweaks to it that fit your programming?
Exactly.
That serves you. Yeah.
When I introduced myself in those meetings, I would tell them that people call me Keith, and I admit that I have addictive qualities just like everybody else. Therefore, I'm learning to dedicate my free will to better purposes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. It's a lot more accurate of what's really going on when you do that. Yeah, when you say it like that.
And it takes out the duality.
Exactly. It just is.
To vent and let it go. As a Dharma practitioner, the major difference is I no longer vent. But I do feel a human level of frustration at things as they arise, but they no longer distract. And the only way that I can explain that is you have to experience it yourself, because there's still things in the world that I notice would be more skillful if they weren't arising that way, but I understand that they're arising because of the ignorance inherent in the world. So there's no reaction. It's simply an acknowledgement of this. Is that clear to everyone? And the reason why I'm saying this, I had an interesting email exchange with one of our other students who's not here tonight, so I won't mention who it is. And they're relatively new, but they're coming to grips with that. And they asked me some significant questions about feelings arising and passing away. And what do I do about these feelings? And the solution, the answer framed by the Eightfold Path is to feel them and know that they're impermanent. The 4 foundations of mindfulness. Tim and I had a brief discussion about that too. So feelings arise and pass away. We don't take any of them personally, including the human feeling of anger or frustration in this moment. But since I don't self-identify with this, I don't take it personally. I don't have to attach it to someone else or try to blame someone else for it. It's simple.
So you don't have to say this person makes me angry. You know.
Yes.
Or
We have to
I'm
realize,
angry. Yeah.
right, we have to realize that's a large part of communication and relationships. When we look at our companion and say, you make me angry, or you did this, and I tell my companion about this because she expects me to make her happy. No, you have to be happy yourself. You have to find that centeredness and then accept me within it. Same thing with anger. The anger comes from you and you're pulling me into it.
Yeah.
That's the displacement so many people will use as a convenience to shed off that guilt or shame of their own by putting it onto somebody else through the language.
Yeah.
If we comprehend that language better, we'll comprehend more what our companions and our friends and families are speaking to us. That's why I tell you, it's very important to understand or comprehend the concise English that's been instituted in this communication system.
Concise, to the point. We need that. Yeah, because that anger can, instead of like engulfing you and immersing you in it like liquid fire, it can pass through you, right? And even that, you can feel like, when someone's angry at you, you can literally feel it. But unless if you realize it's like, that shit's not real in a sense, it's not, or at least it's not mine, and there's no mind, there's no I, it's not going to affect you. And if you can, hopefully, maybe the best you can do is help your partner see that gently.
Yeah, I have to do it to my companion all the time. I ask her what's wrong because I automatically know something's wrong. I can sense it. And she tries to get away with nothing. No, don't tell me that. At least tell me what's wrong so I can deal with it because it does affect me.
Yeah, it does, because we're sharing the same, literally, space consciousness.
That's
time
that.
and place.
That's that energy that's flowing between us.
Right.
A lot of people don't recognize it. I do.
Yeah. Is this why like a lot of us, some of us, we don't go in these big groups of people anymore, these big mass gatherings and stuff, because literally you can feel these thoughts and feelings, but these thoughts going through the air like Wi-Fi or something, right? And sometimes it's a bit much.
Oh yeah, yesterday I had the opportunity to go check out this new bar, and it happens to be that my sister owns it. And
cool.
And the exigent circumstances is that I haven't spoken literally to my sister in 9 years. So we stopped in to see her on a early Friday afternoon, thinking it wouldn't be busy. Well, it wasn't busy, and not only was it not busy, but she wasn't there. So we decided, we'll stop back a little bit later. We got back, and the place is packed, standing room only. And so, the intent was to be able to talk to my sister and have a conversation with her. But being so busy, that wouldn't happen. So we decided to leave. And when I left, it was this huge sigh of relief. Thank God, because I did not want to take that crowd.
Yeah, I feel you on that, man.
Thank God it was such a large crowd, because I have that same issue. I don't like big crowds because of the various different things. And so I try to make them small crowds. And so early afternoon, when it wouldn't be busy, was better. And it just didn't work out. So we're going to try again Sunday afternoon.
Just putting it out there. Sunday afternoon. Don't go there. Is it a new bar? Is that why it was so busy? Or is it always like that?
Yeah, it's been a bar for a number of years, but she's a new owner, and they changed over, and she's brand new in her business respects, and still trying to get the kitchen up and going. But she named it the Slippery Pickle. And one of their things on the drink menu is the Slippery Pickle, which is a margarita, and you can get like olives on toothpicks, but they always put a pickle spear in the middle. So you got a toothpick on.
Oh, I think I can get the image.
Right, on four sides with a olive or a habanero.
Okay.
And then you can get it with a pickle shot or different things.
Oh, that sounds like fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a unique drink, a unique mixed drinks menu. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's always fun, man. Somewhere in time, good to see you. Yeah. So watch a little bit of this more of
growing,
this.
arising, and passing away. And that's what the Buddha is referring to here. Let me go back to that one. As a strong charioteer controls their charge, the disciple controls anger as anger arises. This is the true charioteer. Others only hold tight to the reins. That's a metaphor for simply getting caught up in the world, and we're always hanging on tight because it feels like the world is out of control when it's really our minds that are out of control. The world is just the world. It's never out of control. It's our minds that take it that way. So we hang on to the reins.
Yeah.
Yeah, hanging on to the reins. Hanging on to the reins. Hanging on to the reins here. You're hanging on. That's that ego thing. I just asked Lindsay not too long ago if she ever read the Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now.
Oh yeah, I have that book.
And the guy was mentioning about being distracted when something comes up and does it distracting. He doesn't let it distract him anymore. That's what he's talking about. No matter what's going on, he's able to stay in the now and pay attention to what is important and not be distracted by that ego of what might have been in the past or might be in the future.
Right. That type of that in that chamber of thought, Eckhart Tolle, and not being distracted, that literally got me to peek into the rabbit hole, right? And then I fell down. I tripped and fell down. Yeah, but the funny thing is like, and then I landed in 2013 on what I thought was the ground, but maybe in the end it's probably just a ledge, right? And that's when I found non-duality. And this is I'm someone who believes that, like, I was raised, I still am a Christian in the sense that that's my main programming, my main operating system. However, I respect other religions and forms of spirituality as well. Because in the end, I think when it comes down to it, a lot of these programs are talking about the same thing.
Yeah, I've mentioned that several times. I was brought up as in a deep German Catholic home, raised as a
Catholic,
Christian. Throughout all foster homes, I had some kind of Christian faith that I was subjected to, Presbyterian, Methodist, whatever. And then in my adult life, when I got into theology and started researching different religions and stuff, I come across the same thing. And the foundation is that according to a source of life, we are all the same. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Big and small, all creatures across the board.
Right. All the same, yeah. Yeah. And Mike, best wishes to you somewhere in time. The comment she said they took out their dad against his wishes after I flown him home to get him out of the ICU. He's been in there for 3 weeks. Laid hands on him, no drugs. He had a full recovery movement. He begged me not to leave. 9 days later, he passed. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, man. Wow.
Overcome anger by being free of anger. Overcome evil by skillful behavior. Overcome miserliness with generosity. Overcome lies rooted in ignorance with Four Noble Truths. Incredibly practical, isn't it? Do not give in to anger. Always speak the truth. Be generous with little. These three are praised by the noble ones. The disciple, harmless, well restrained, abandons the living death of ignorance. Confusion, delusion, and suffering cease. Always vigilant and well focused, ever mindful of the goal. Their defilements fade away. The defilements are greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. So it's not something that yields, the defilements are not something that yield to a headlong assault. In other words, meaning recognizing that you have it, judging yourself for it, insisting that you don't be that way. Tim and I kind of touched on this a little earlier too. The Dhamma is about being very, very gentle with ourselves, recognizing the manifestations of fabrications that, as the Buddha teaches, are like foam on the ocean. There's nothing really there. And so there's nothing to judge ourselves harshly about. It's simply to take another breath and continue abandoning the root of all of these manifestations of anger, ignorance of Four Noble Truth. And that is,
I think we're always cutting the fat. You know, be stuff that's not serving you.
precisely what the Eightfold Path is about, isn't it? To develop that understanding of Four Noble Truths.
Okay, I like where he's going with that. I put the video, the whole video in the chat, in the public and private chat.
Yeah, I saw that.
Video.
Thanks. And cutting that fat, you know, I quit the banking. I quit my job. I've changed my entire life when it comes to that aspect, and that's a large part of it, folks. Again, that ego that says that you have to do things like everybody else. That ego is so large that if you can do what I myself have done, that's one of the most humbling experiences. It changes your life, and your riches are certainly from a different source and at a different aspect. I'm a very rich man, but not according to a fiat instrument.
Right. You're wealthy in that real currency, with the real currency, you know.
And I'm not gonna lie to you, and I'm not gonna let others lie to you. That's one of the things that binds me in this aspect of being so angry, is that I don't let lies run. I have to speak up. It's so ingrained in me now that it's hard for me to keep my mouth shut sometimes.
Yeah, these lies for you. That's what takes you. I have a writing class I teach on the weekends, and I told my high school students yesterday that was one of the essay questions I want them to think about this week, and we'll write about it next week. Is like why is it so hard for people to stand up for what is right, and what can we do to take away that fear, you know, that some of us have, because a lot of people don't stand up for what they think is right.
Yeah, I think a large part of it comes down to those expectations. See, when I threw off the expectations, that's part of what changed me internally, is that I realized that's what was holding me back, and my expectations were bound by other men.
Yeah, that is it's a very heavy burden that we put on ourselves with that type of space, man. And when you finally just say, I know people like to say, I don't give a fuck, which sounds cool and all, but that mode though really is freeing. Yeah.
I care so much that it looks like I don't care.
Yeah. I get what you're saying by that. Those of us that are experienced that, we can see it. This is a 12-step program. I was telling you about one of the dudes I like to listen to, Paul Heineman, the ex-AA, the ex-alcoholic who leads duality streams, group streams, as well as recovery streams. And this is part of it. I want to give us a taste about this. This is really good stuff right here.
So the other day, I was reading in the back of the book on the lost chapters. So they say this to the employers. It's on page 145.
This is the book, as they call it, right? In the AA, the book. Refer to it. Yeah, here we go.
Yep.
There's Paul right here from the Bay Area, but from my East Coast.
And this really caught my attention. It's the it's the third paragraph.
Yep.
All right. The greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. Wherever men are gathered together in business, there will be rivalries, and arising out of these, a certain amount of office politics. Sometimes we alcoholics have an idea that people are trying to pull us down. Often this is not so at all, but sometimes our drinking will be used politically. That first line there, Paul, the greatest enemies of alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. You know, I've heard, and you know, I don't know, but I heard that Bill chose his words wisely. And if he did, then he used that word enemy as for a reason. And I heard other people talk about this paragraph, and they framed this chapter as not just necessarily as a chapter to the employers, but as a chapter to, let's say, a sponsor, or how to sponsor somebody. So if you can talk about whatever, I'll just open it up. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. See, I never read that chapter because it said to the employers, and I was never an employer. So, hey, I follow instructions. This is to the employer, so I passed on it. Literally. I like to stay employed by the new employer. Yeah. I'm an employee. Yeah. Yeah. So the greatest enemies of us alcoholics, well, they would be manifestations of self in one's life. Yes. So, and
that ego.
The enemy is not us. That's the beautiful news. Yeah.
Yeah, he called it the manifestation of the self. But yeah, that's the same thing, basically. Yeah.
Because obviously a lot of people feel from a twisted way of seeing things that they are their own worst enemy. Yeah.
Yep.
They are worse than jealousy, resentment, all these other things. Yeah. So frustration and fear. The fear thing is, the fear is a valid emotion, but in its operating mechanism, there usually has to be an apparent threat to trigger the fear. Yeah. Now, something has learned to trigger the fear without an apparent threat. And to me, that problem resides in the mind. And so most of what we call fear is triggered by mental anxiety. Yes?
Yes.
Because how could you be afraid of something truly if it wasn't appearing? Yeah, it must be appearing somewhere, which is in the head. Yeah.
You want to pause?
So I really like to push the idea of mental.
There you go.
So the fear thing, kind of like we mentioned earlier with the frustration and getting beyond it and not letting it distract you. So that's a momentary thing. It comes up and goes. Mm-hmm. So the fear we're looking at here is something that comes into our mind and resides there.
Right.
Whereas the other one is a situational fear. You run across a bear on a trail that you're hiking. It's a situational fear that will leave once you bypass or succumb it. So it's a matter of the now time. Face it with reality. If it's not really a fear, then what is it?
Yeah.
It's your own battle.
It's your own, yeah. And that's, dude, this is like, I was trying to be funny with the title, Fear and Loathing, but comes the fear and then the loathing. Fear and loathing in South Central or wherever you're at. Fear and loathing in your universe you call yourself.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anxiety a lot more. Today, at least till 11:30, I don't think I'm going to have an apparent threat come into the room while I'm sitting on the Zoom. And so basically, without the trigger, there won't be any fear. But if what we call fear is triggered by mental anxiety, that can be happening at all times. Yeah. And really, the great producer of fear is faith in the wrong thing. Yeah. Faith in the thoughts where the problem resides and the interpretations of perceptions, which is it's a perceptual problem. All these things, the faith in that is what defeats us, literally. Yeah. Yeah. That's our role in things. That's why when they say, maybe you could stop entertaining, stop harboring, stop, it's like we're giving stuff shelter and refuge that maybe we don't want to. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think in some respects, our reaction from powerlessness was just to deny it and not acknowledge any of it. So we're being moved by a lot of things with the fear of finding out about those things. Yes.
Yeah.
The underlying thing. Because as you and me, Mike.
just like people overcome their addictions and their alcoholism. I overcame paying taxes. They quit doing drugs and drinking. I quit paying taxes. It's the same thing. It's all based on that same fear mechanism that isn't real. When you find out the reality and go in yourself and say, hey, well, if they have no power, then I'm not going to pay them taxes anymore. If that beer has no power over me, then why am I drinking it? If the drugs have no power over me, then why am I doing them? In fact, when you realize they do have power over you, and that's why you're doing them, you realize the IRS has power over you, and that's why you're paying your taxes. Find the truth. There's no real power there.
One sec. I want to play this real quick, okay? Let's see.
Go on some level, we think we did all this shit. Yeah. There's a feeling that you did it all and you've had enough. You don't want to see any more information about how fucked you are. Yeah. You want to sort of let's forget about it. Let's watch Die Hard 11 or something, you know. It's just, yeah. But if you can start from this position that what you're looking at and what you're looking into is not of you, yeah, it's not you, I think then you can have a fearless, thorough inventory of it. I do not believe you're going to do a fearless, thorough inventory of you. There's just too many things that are hidden, yeah? And the hiding of it on the head's level is survival, yeah? Because it presents that it's going to kill you if you find out how fucking bad you are or unlovable, yes? So there's a huge threat. So basically, we're harboring it, and it's telling us it's giving us shelter, but we're harboring this shit like frustration and jealousy and mental anxiety. Yeah. So we're believing it's doing something other than it's actually doing. Yeah. Yeah. So this, the greatest enemies of us alcoholics are resentment, jealousy, envy, frustration, and fear. And then he's talking about business because it's weird, isn't it? What is it? It's only in love and no, business has its own morals, right? You can do anything if it's business. And basically in America, the manifest code of corporations is to make shareholders money. So whatever they can do to do that is deemed to be okay in that view. Can you imagine if people just make this shit up and then, you know, okay, I'm doing something business, it's okay. If I, yeah, it's amazing. It really is. It's oh, wow, it's just something else. I would just like to just stay on point in a way, just see, because how everything is influenced by the beginning of everything. And like it or not, this is a subjective experience. Yeah. So if you wrote down everything that you met and did and saw and felt, and everyone else wrote down what they saw, felt, meant, and did, or where they went to and stuff, it wouldn't capture any of the experience because it's not an objective experience. It's a subjective one. Yeah. Somebody gets hurt, it triggers them to stop drinking. Someone gets hurt, it triggers them to start drinking. Yeah. This is a subjective event. And if the subjective event has been captured by a false identification with this idea of self, then we get an interpretation, not even of our own making. It's made up. Yeah.
Thanks, Peril. Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think the guy's spot on, you know. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm one of those guys. I do my inventory. You know, I do that man in the mirror thing, and that's where I comprehend that it's not your view of me, and it's not the alcohol, and it's not the drugs, because they don't have power. Therefore, it must be me and me alone. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know that's me. It is me, 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 me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way I can profess to be for everybody else is to recognize who I am and what I can do for them.
Yeah. This is where the word selfish, the selfish is twisted a lot of ways.
Yep. I can't do anything for everybody else. I can't do for myself. I can't sit here and profess that the 12 steps is a good program if I haven't been through them myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The 5% nation, they talk about knowledge of self is the only game in town. What's funny is maybe at the end of that search of knowledge of self is that there is no self, or at least in the way that we think it is. You know? Fascinating.
So an alcoholic sees the way alcoholics see, feels the way alcoholics feels, and does the same shit alcoholics do. Yes? Where is the uniqueness in it? There isn't any. Yeah? We're standardized versions of washed up alcoholics. Literally. So this is the beauty. I mean, AA is so incredible because by not trying to change the situation in a way, but to tell the truth about the situation and bring a solution into it, which is a spiritual solution. Yeah. Not a mental and physical one. There may be some of those, but the basis is a spiritual solution. So we're going to see it.
That would be metaphysics, right? It's a spiritual.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a great way to look at it.
See, when we think about the mental aspect, we're talking about those emotions. And the spirituality is the key to being able to balance those emotions. And through the balance of those emotions, that's the key to balance the body.
That's it.
Anew, like St. Francis says, in self-forgetting, we're reborn. This is what AA is.
Yo, it's self-forgetting, you're reborn. Because what happens is, like, for example, you've been so, as an addict, they were so obsessed with this whole thing, like this drinking is taking me over, it's ruining myself, my health, all my relationships. And it gets to a point where you're just like, I'm over all of it, right? And then that's like the first step, literally, where maybe you can like be reborn into something like you don't take yourself so seriously.
Yeah, you start building a relationship, a new relationship with yourself, like it says. You'll have that repeated in those 12-step programs. That's the basis. You, again, have to start looking at yourself, do that inventory, and recreate yourself through your own eyes by having that conversation with yourself. You have to get into your head. You have to have a meeting with your different personalities and say, why do you feel this and why do you feel this? You know, when you're angry, are you one of the ones that says, you make me angry, or do you accept that you're the one that got angry because of your own causation?
Yeah. Like you said, you have to put yourself in the equation right there. Yeah. Greetings, Machine Lies. How's it going, brother? Good to see you.
You learn through a way of life to forget self. Yeah.
Hurricane.
And in the forgetting of self, it opens the door for all these other possibilities. Yeah. That aren't open. They're locked. Not because the door is locked, but because of self is trying to go through the door. Yes? It can't fucking fit. So we live a life to lose interest in this ideation of self, and then tons of amazing shit starts to happen.
Yeah, because you live space for tons of great stuff to happen. It's just your obsession was taking over everything.
Literally. I know people their whole life, internally and externally, is AA. Completely. The one they married, everything. Yes? Can you imagine that? What a great employer taking care of us. I've seen, seriously, it's the norm. It's not this. It's not a strange phenomena. It's the norm that when people get sober, their whole life is based on the sobriety, who they met, what they do, everything. That is a solution. Yeah,
I guess that's the
incredible.
part of the higher power, huh?
Somebody I haven't seen in a long time came to the talk last night. Long time. And he was telling me about his idea of why I seem to have bothered a lot of people in AA. And he said, you know what? It's the word self, bro. You could have continued to be a circuit speaker if you just kept your mouth shut. Gone along with the plan.
Yeah, because he says in the end the self is not even real and stuff. He says it's better than I can, but yeah.
The problem doesn't want an exact diagnosis of the problem. It doesn't.
And I guess his interpretation, the self is the problem. At least the over-identification with it.
Yeah, that's a very large part. That's a very large part of it. But again, I'm always going to reiterate that it's not just that, but you have to then, like I put in the back chat, to me, it's more of putting priorities in order. So much like the character defect of having anger issues, it's not a character defect. It's a matter of learning how to balance it. So I myself, though I went through the program, I may or may not dabble with the use of cocaine or meth once in a while. It's up to me. I don't make those kind of choices as a regular part of life because I recognize them as a great distraction. So if my life is convenient enough that I can take that liability or that possibility into my priorities, then I may do so. That's up to my free will and choice. And that's why I say it's up to us.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That's why I think for me, the way I see it is like psychedelics. I think they're very interesting. I'm very fascinated with that. And also, weed. Oh God, I'm from Northern California, so it's part of my culture. I just don't do it now. And I think these things are luxuries for me. And like you said, I don't have it. My situation is not in a situation where it's conducive or matches up with what I'm doing now, the things that my goals right now. But that doesn't mean in the future it'll be different, So I see what you mean. Yeah. And the whole point is to make sure we have balance.
Exactly. So if you're overbalanced and you could use a break that where you would just sit around and drool for a little bit, you could maybe drool a little bit.
Reset, right? Like a reset. The great reset. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Actually, yeah, I probably have to shut this down because my junior Ben, he asked to. I want to build some stuff with them right now.
Hey, do it, brother.
It's been great, bro.
You bet.
It's been wonderful. Yeah,
thanks for
having me. Pretty good team right here.
Absolutely, I appreciate it. Yeah, you be blessed, and everybody hit that like, share, and subscribe button, and know that I love you.
All right, much love, Keith. I'll talk to you soon, brother. Peace. Phenomenal knowledge right there, Keith. Bro, that was dope. Yeah, we're gonna close it out. Shout out to everyone here, man. Appreciate y'all. Like I said, Machine Lives, El Puro, Hurricane Paro. Somewhere within time, doing the great works out there. Lindsay Smith, the high powered knowledge. Alex, Andrea, much love, beauty. What's up with that guy? Locksmith Jeremy in the house, my brother. Godheart Guardian, most conscious person in the metaverse. Crazy Mama, I'm glad you're on my side. Much love. OTW the first, not to be confused with OTW the second. Then the great Look Within. Amazing brother right here. He is a value treasure. Ragamuffin, blessed up. Blessed up. And the great Shadow Buddha. And NPC Leopard Prince. Much love. I'll be seeing you guys soon. This has been Fear and Loathing in South Central Los Angeles. Rolling 30, Harlem Crips, and Abandoned Anger. Right, dog. Yeah. You don't need it. Abandon the anger. Because if it doesn't make dollars, it don't make sense. All right? I'll see you next time. Peace.